tonight is Melisa Cahnmann-Taylor, who's an associate professor in language and literacy education at UGA. She's published poems and reviews in journals such as APR, Quarterly West, Puerto del Sol, Barrow Street, Women's Review of Books, Cream City, Georgia Review, and Literary Mama. She is the winner of several Dorothy Sargent Rosenberg Prizes and a Leeway Poetry Grant, and has co-authored 2 books, Teachers Act Up, Creating Multicultural Learning Communities Through Theater, and Arts-Based Research and Education, Foundations for Practice. Please welcome Melisa Cahnmann.
Thank you, Lizzie, and thank you, VOX, and thank you, artist whose name I forget already. Cecilia and Rock, for bringing this together. Josh said in the beginning, how difficult it is to write political poetry, and one piece of advice from Ira Sadoff, one of my teachers, was, you have to watch out for moral certainty in a political poem. You shouldn't be so sure of yourself, because then the reader will, so I'm sure my poems are full of moral certainty, but forgive me. And I feel lucky because I put out a call for someone to drum with me because I felt that this event called for some collaboration, and I got Karen Schlinger with her snare and djembe. Woo! So we're going to start with some drums, and this first poem is called Habitat for Humanity, and I thought I'd open with a little bit of a prayer that came out of an experience here in Athens. We were working on her house and on our lives, old wars of faith among volunteers. God, Allah, Buddha, Jesus, Adonai. God, Allah, Buddha, Jesus, Adonai. We wore names on duct tape and tried to prune and level the foundation where we were working on her house and on our lives. We set joists to meet the center beam inside our creation, hammered out interiors. God, Allah, Buddha, Jesus, Adonai. God, Allah, Buddha, Jesus, Adonai. We built the floor with plywood and heavy sighs since Georgia heat was more than we could bear while working on her house and on our lives. The church brought hot dogs, watermelons, and pies. Heads bent, we sang our gratitude in prayer. God, Allah, Buddha, Jesus, Adonai. God, Allah, Buddha, Jesus, Adonai. 4 weeks of walls and trusses firmly tied. The roof went up, and from our hands appeared her house. We worked together on our lives. God, Allah, Buddha, Jesus, Adonai. 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 Woo! Clearing space, multi-denominational space. Something that I found interesting is, how to feel war. And I was talking to Cecilia, that this kind of exhibit helps you, whether you, someone here, I know Dana here was talking about how, just feeling war, just hearing the war on the news, sometimes you can't even listen to the news because you feel it so internally. And in other senses, I feel like I don't really understand war. I don't really feel, I don't live it every day, and yet part of me does, right? Part of us does. So I was remembering when on Martin Luther King Day in 1994, I was living in Los Angeles and the earthquake hit. And I was on a ski vacation north of Los Angeles. And I was a school teacher, and because our schools were canceled, I just kept traveling. And I was like, more days off school. I went to the Grand Canyon, and I met I said to some people on the top of the rim, I'm here from LA, I can't go home, my home is a wreck. I can't even take the freeway back. But I'm getting more vacation out of it. And this guy just says, me too. I'm here fleeing the snowstorms on the East Coast. So that's interesting. Someone else piped up, came, their head poked up over the rock and said, well, I'm here fleeing the hurricanes in South Florida. So that's interesting. And then there was a Finnish guy who came over and he said, oh yeah? Well, I got an idea. See, what I do is I travel in war areas because it's cheaper. You can get great hotel rates when you travel in a war. And I was like, wow, that's really weird. That's a weird way to think. And then I thought, oh, I wonder when New York's rates are going to drop and I can go to the Big Apple. And I'm just like, so it's a strange thing. And there's a lot of us that benefit from the economy of war in really strange ways. Krakow. A friend clicks through pictures of salt mines, storybook rooftops, beet soup, pierogies by the dozen. Such a deal, traveling there, bed and breakfast, less than half what it would cost to visit slave plantations in Charleston, half the time and airfare to resorts near India's brothels. From the gate, he captured snapshots of barracks, lines of tourists waiting to be refused, cameras inside. His return flight stopped in London, where he marched with British protesters bearing signs, "We're all Hezbollah." Admission free. London's National Gallery, Auschwitz. I asked him to tell me again how much one pays for fried lard, sour rye soup. How much to visit the graves, what's left of the shallow, salty, underground sea. My own honeymoon was in Croatia with my beautiful husband Jason, and the weather was the worst in a century. We went in June and we were supposed to enjoy the beautiful waters and we couldn't get in, it was so cold. So we traveled, we met it under an awning, it was pouring, and there was this group of Israeli women, and they said, go to the mountains, you have to go to the mountains, it's so much better there than to sit on the coast in this horrible weather. So we went to the border with Serbia and Bosnia. A Taste of War, June 2006. We watched the World Cup in Bojica's village. Croatia down 1-0. Red and white checkered hats droop because, as her cousin groaned, this country deserves a tie. We devour links of pork, mounds of fried lamb with bread. The Civil War started on this border. 15 years later, men crowd around outdoor television sets while women in church courtyards dance, eyes sparkling like the sea brought back to this mountain. After the war, we work for Red Cross, Serbs, Croats, everyone. We have to work. There is much anger. Bojica smokes like a movie star. I want her to tell my new husband and me what she learned when forced to flee a burning house. I only know about missed ferries and burnt toast. I pay to see the museum photographs, 50 kuna to walk the ancient port city's fortress, shoot pictures where arrows pierced Turks, these watch posts, once windows to the sticky syrup of blood, now open unto barefoot boys playing soccer and cherry gelato for sale.